Do we have a quorum at this point?
We are short on the quorum, but I believe
Okay.
Perry will be joining us later, and we may get some more folks.
Okay, since the minutes require a motion and approval, and we don't have the ability to do that, we'll bypass that for now. Beth, do you have anything for us on the SAGE seat voting?
Yes, I do. I sent out emails to the different groups involved in the open seats and asked them to vote on the candidates, and that was successful. So Dia, Ryan, and Marcia will be serving another term.
Okay.
I will update the website accordingly. I just didn't want to do it until I'd reported here at the council meeting.
Does that leave us any gaps or unfilled positions?
I believe we still have an unfilled position at the circulating library level. And that may be something that we look into either filling or revising our bylaws to either remove that seat or put it somewhere else. So that's something that we can discuss at a future meeting for sure.
Okay. Is there anything else on the SAGE Council seat voting?
No.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate that information. Committee reports.
Okay. John sent me a summary for the cataloging committee. So I'll go ahead and read that. The cataloging committee met on October 5th for its bi-monthly meeting. In this meeting, the committee nominated and approved Celine Vandergeluk from Grand as the incoming chair for the new year. Beth provided an update on authorities, and then John gave a not brief enough announcement regarding the recent policy change excluding GMD terms from new RDA records. There was then a discussion regarding WebDewey and some of the challenges, shortcomings of using Dewey Decimal for certain collection materials. The meeting concluded with an examination of the new cataloging revisions approved by the User Council at its last meeting. The Cat 1 assessments have been completed, and we currently have a candidate well into the process. Any questions about that report from the cataloging committee?
Do they have a direction that they're moving at this point then? Just to ask what makes an obvious question, but.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question, Mark.
Is there a goal or objective in mind that they are moving towards as a committee that they would like some support on or anything?
I think the main goal is just keeping communication going with the cataloging community within SAGE, as well as increasing the skills and training for catalogers.
Okay. Do they feel like they're getting the support they need from the directors and SAGE in general in doing so?
I believe so. I think the fact that the council approved the changes to the policy and the core competency documents in our last meeting reflects that the council understands the importance of cataloging. I think that there's some directors that may not completely understand the nature of cataloging, and so there may be some education we could do to illustrate that to directors at times, but I don't know of a specific instance right now.
Okay. I've noticed that we've had a few more people join us. Or are we at quorum status yet? Or do we have non-voting members join us?
Yeah, we still don't have enough, if I'm reading this correct.
All right, next item on our agenda is a request by Elgin High School Library for a hiatus and SAGE membership for this year due to COVID closure. What does that request entail, Beth?
That request would just entail them not paying their membership fee this year and not using the system. They're a resource sharing partner, so it's a minimal charge of, I think it's $402 that we would not get if we approve their hiatus. Yeah, 402.
My big question on that would be, do we have other resource sharing members that might also then turn to that and say we'd like to as well? I don't know what that would do to finances or not. I realize one library for $400 doesn't seem like an awful lot. I'm just not sure if this would become a something that we'd have more issue with or not.
Yeah, I don't know at this time. I haven't been approached by anybody else with the membership invoices that have been sent out. So I don't believe it would. But
how many other libraries are in that kind of a status, paying that kind of or in that kind of a status at all, I guess? I'm just not aware off the top of my head.
I'm doing a quick count here.
Sure.
We have 5 libraries in that grouping altogether.
Okay.
I'm curious if there's any sort of an expense to the process or expenses that we're going to accrue regardless of whether they're here in regards to their, the the server or anything like that.
If they're not using the system for circulation, they're not using it for resource sharing. Yes, their records are on the server, but they would be made not available. They don't have a separate courier. When they are getting materials, they're delivered to the Elgin Public Library. So there's no courier fee, separate courier fee incurred for them. So that's another factor.
I'm thinking like things like server storage costs for records they have in the system or something like that we're going to incur regardless of whether they pay their membership fees. Because hiatus implies they're coming back, so we wouldn't be completely removing them.
No, and we wouldn't have to bring them back in, that kind of thing. So, my feeling was that it wouldn't be that big a deal, but obviously that would be something that would need council approval. We do have a quorum at this point. If we do want to vote on that.
Is there more discussion before, or do we have a motion from anyone in the a voting member?
This is Deneen. I did not hear what you guys were talking about.
Oh, okay. So we're on the agenda item Deneen, that we had a request by the Elgin High School Library, who's a resource sharing member, for a hiatus of their membership this year because of the COVID closures. Their students aren't going to be able to use the service. So they were asking if they would be able to take a break for this year from their SAGE membership since it wasn't going to be used. And so that's what I'm asking the council for approval or disapproval of this
Okay,
request.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
Beth, how many did you say might otherwise be in this same category?
There's five libraries in this category. The Josephi Library, Tomaslik, Hermiston High School, trying to think, Ione High School. I'm missing one more. Maybe not. Oh, Stanfield Secondary School.
Okay. I guess I don't have a problem with it as long as there's no substantial cost we're incurring, whether they pay their membership or not. So I guess I would make a motion to approve the request for Elgin's High School to suspend their membership for a year.
Here a second.
I guess for the school year, technically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a motion on the table, and without a second, it dies on the table.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Beth, do we have a good way of counting the vote? Or do we need to do a roll call of some kind?
I guess it'd probably easier to call for objections to the motion.
Okay. Are there objections to the motion?
Can I ask a question first?
Of course.
So should we have, excuse me, other schools, for instance, which would be what? A total of 4 schools possibly, from what you just ran off. If we had others, how would that impact the budget overall? If they asked also, because that would be like, what, $1,600 or so?
Yeah, a couple of them are museum libraries, and so they don't really fall into the same COVID restrictions that the
Right,
school
but
would. But there'll be
you
three.
mentioned 3 other
There's
schools.
3 schools altogether, with Ione School, Elgin, and Stanfield. So potentially, if there were other schools that decided to also request a suspension for a year, maybe $1,200 and $1,204. But I know that Stanfield Secondary School, they did not request it. They did respond that they would be paying their bill. So I know it's not an issue for them. I haven't heard directly from Ione School that there was any issue with paying their bill this year. So I don't anticipate others joining the queue, but I understand the reservation that you might have.
Thanks.
This is Perry. I'm sorry I'm late to the meeting. So I'm just joining the conversation. If this request is granted, is there an understanding that they're going to pay at a later time, or is it waived? Is the fee waived altogether?
Well, my understanding was that it would be waived for this year because they would not be using the system for this year.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's a temporary withdrawal.
It's a temporary,
from
yeah.
stage.
We keep the records in there. I just mark them not available. Obviously, holds are turned off for their items, that kind of thing. And what I'll do is I'll actually hide their items from the catalog as well, because there's a quick switch that you can do to turn off display of that particular library in the OPAC. So, yeah, basically it would seem like they weren't there, and then next year they could be there without any work other than turning a couple switches on our end.
I see. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we've had some more discussion. We're still looking if there are any objections. Hearing none, do we make the assumption then that everyone approves of giving them this hiatus? We're all real chatty today, aren't we? Beth, I think we'll take that as an approval of the hiatus.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
And since we have a quorum again, I'd like to go back to the approval of the September 15 minutes.
Okay. Mark, there were a couple corrections made to the minutes after I sent them out. A misspelling on Kathleen's name, which I've updated on my copy as well as the web. And Anne made the motion to approve the documents, the cataloging documents as presented, and I had another name there, and I correct. Dia noticed that, and I also noticed that in my notes, so I made the correction. But obviously, the incorrect version got out to you guys. So anyway, those changes have been made to the minutes.
Are there other corrections to the minutes that need to be discussed before or I'll entertain a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion. Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan and Dia.
Does anyone object? Hearing no objections, we will make the assumption of full approval.
Very good.
And we're on to our next item on the agenda, which is recent system problems.
Yes.
Yeah,
John, do you feel comfortable addressing this?
sure.
Okay, thanks.
So, I went ahead. The easiest way to try and figure out what was going on was for me to pull basically a list of all instances that I was having critical system problems for the past year, and it has been almost every day since November 6th. And it's been just with the app servers, which are the ones that host all the web traffic that, those are, when someone's accessing the OPAC and they submit a query, it goes through those servers to the database servers. In the past, it would go down, we'd have a CPU spike once or twice a month on either the database server or the app servers. Instead, we've been having it at least once a day, sometimes a couple times a day. At 4 a.m. Monday morning, both of them went down, and there was finally a lot of stuff in the logs. And it looks like the issue is a memory allocation error, which I send over to EOU, because when I look up the error, it points to probably an issue with the VMware that hosts those servers, because they're virtual servers. So I'm waiting on a response from them. In the meantime, I've been monitoring the CPU load a lot more closely, and especially app 2, because it's the one that's been going down more often. And every time it hits more than 4 times, so the way it's tracked is basically a percentage of total CPU load. And the normal load for those servers is in the, I would say, under 2. So it's basically 2 times CPU load. It's kind of a subjective number, but it's been spiking to over 4. And so anytime it starts to hit 4 or above, I've just been restarting services on app 2. So that's why it's been less of an issue, and I haven't gotten complaints as much the last couple days. So I'm just going to keep on that until I can find an actual solution. But Beth and I have talked about the other 2 bullet points where we're looking at potentially doing a server upgrade or Evergreen upgrade. I did check all bug fixes for the latest versions of Evergreen. None of our issues are mentioned there. So, and let's see, it was something else. Oh, yes. Most often in the past when it was happening, it was the database server had a stuck query in it that for some reason hadn't terminated properly. I've been checking that every time first, and that isn't the cause. So that's why I'm focusing on this memory allocation error that did finally show up in the logs to see if that's the solution. I think that's everything. And if I need to re-explain any of that, please let me know.
Thanks, John. That was great.
Okay.
Yeah, this recent system problems just kind of came out of the blue. And it did seem to be obviously related to something on the app server. So hopefully you will get back to us soon. Does anybody have any question about that before we move to talking about server upgrades?
What things run on that server? I mean, I know one of the things that we've started recently, and I don't think this is it, but I have no idea. We've learned how to use the new book kind of rolling scrolling feature, and we have created a number of our new books.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that one of the things? Is that the kind of thing that?
That's one of the things. Basically, any communication that happens between our web clients and the OPAC and the database happen on the app servers. One of the things that we're looking at with the server upgrades is we've talked to, John and I have talked some in the past about maybe adding a 3rd application server, since there's so much communication back and forth between the database and these application servers that basically do all of the work for commands that are issued through the web client, and also people searching in the OPAC. We have what's called a load balancer server that divides the traffic between application server 1 and application server 2. So we thought, well, if we add a 3rd application server, that's going to divide the traffic up even more and lower the load on each of the individual application servers. So that's another possibility that would relieve some of the problems. And I've got some other ideas once we get into the server upgrade discussion. But yeah, basically they're the workhorses of the system, these application servers. So they're pretty important. But the carousels, other libraries have carousels on that OPAC display as well. And I don't believe that that's driving any particular issue. And especially since this started around November 6th, and we had a lot of carousels already in place before that. I think
Mhm.
I think we're okay.
I know, just Heidi did these without it, your assistance, we assume she's done them correctly. They look good. We're happy with them.
Yeah, she did a
But
great job. Yeah,
Mhm.
no problems.
whether we missed a ticker or a box or something here or there that may cause other problems,
Yeah,
I just
no,
know that it hasn't been that long that we've had them.
Yeah.
And relatively recent. So anyway, all right. You sound like you're segueing right into a server upgrade there.
Well, we had talked about the fact that our servers are getting older. More and more data, of course, is on them because we're adding more and more records. And we have set aside money in the past for server replacement. And it seems like this may be a good year to do that. So John pulled some estimates of what it would take to replace either one or two servers. We've got the main production server that holds our database. And if we replace that on the high end, it would be around $9,592. That's with all the customizations. And like I said, that's the high end. It could be that we could come in a little lower. The DB server is what's called a replication server. And so it copies everything from the main database server to it. And so basically, it's essentially a copy, so that if our main database went down, we would have this secondary database we could switch over to and not miss a beat. We could either spend the same money that we're spending for the other server so that they're exactly alike, or we could scale down and spend a little less on that one. If we were concerned about spending around $19,000, we could just make the old DB production server be the new DB server. But part of my thinking of upgrading both servers at this time is that it would allow us to move some other server functionality around and possibly we could have a third application server. Plus, one of the ideas I had was currently we have the log server, the application 1 server, and the application 2 server are all virtual on EOU hosted equipment. I thought, well, what we might be able to do is move those to virtual servers that we host on our own physical servers. And so there's some changing around that we could do that would give us, I think, better access as well as more robust capability. So I don't know how much more to go into detail about that. I guess I'll just entertain questions or concerns.
I know we've had a somewhat of a plan for upgrades. Where are we standing in that plan right now? Are we at the year we would do that? Or are we is that a year away? Is it 2 years away? On that plan, I guess, is my first question. And then the next would be, what have we set aside? And because, we always have to do that with the unknown that the price will fluctuate. And so then it becomes a question of, what do we actually have to afford? What can we go shopping with, so to speak?
Yeah, Perry, do you remember what we have off the top of your head? Or should I bring up the budget?
$25,000 is what we have set aside.
That's what I thought I had remembered. So
And-
with the 19,000, if we did replace 2 servers and moved up a bunch of other servers into that other equipment or functionality into the other equipment, that would get us pretty far along on really making significant upgrade to our system.
I like it. I'm for it.
So
What?
can I ask a clarifying question, Beth?
Yeah.
You were talking about an app server and high of $5,092 or something. Was that correct there? And then this database server would be an additional 19,000, or the two together?
The two together, what's called the DB prod server, which is our main production server, plus the DB server, which is the copy of the database.
Okay. Okay.
Those two together is 19,000. Because
Okay.
because we have equipment that we would be, we still have hardware that is quite good, but not, I guess what I'm saying is we can leverage the existing equipment we have after the upgrade to do other things that will give us
Okay.
more functionality, more capabilities, and also allow us to host our own potentially virtual servers rather than EOU hosting them. I mean, all the servers are still housed at EOU, but it would be Sage equipment, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think
Is there a
that,
cost to specified housing there or that we would
No.
eliminate by doing that?
no, they have not charged us anything.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you
Go
for
ahead.
that clarification.
oh, you're welcome.
My next question comes then, if we have more equipment working for us, if we have failure, then we have to be prepared to replace more equipment. And at what point would we have the money saved to do that? Or are we spending down so much that we're going to be, without the ability to replace for 2 or 3 years? What are we looking at from that perspective? How do we feel about that?
Well, if we use the 19,000 out of the 25,000, we're looking at, we're not going to have to replace servers for at least 3 years. That gives us time to allocate in the budget additional monies to prepare us for the next time.
Would it also be helpful to know how old the existing servers are?
Sure.
So the DB prod server was purchased in 2013, and the DB server was 2010, and the test server was 2009. So they've all been in production for quite a while. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about them going down. When we get new servers, we've got the average lifespan is 5 to 10 years. So I wouldn't worry about not having enough time to replenish that budget, space for it.
Okay.
So one of the ideas I had, if we decide to move forward with the server upgrades, is that we could time it with our Evergreen upgrade and actually get all of the equipment ready and the new version of Evergreen installed on the new servers and our data ported over so that we would have less downtime with an Evergreen upgrade. Now, I haven't confirmed this with Equinox, but I believe that would go a long way in reducing our downtime for the next Evergreen upgrade, which I was going to suggest that we work on sometime this winter. I don't know, February, March type thing, upgrade to 3.6. We're on 3.4 currently.
The other thing about doing it that way is it allows to do a fresh install of the operating system,
Yes. Yeah.
because it's just been a continual upgrade process. So it's the same OS, any quirks that have, worked their way into the system would finally be removed. So
we'd be probably looking at making sure we're ready to go for a January, February upgrade to Evergreen. So you would want to look at starting to acquire the hardware in December or so you can have have it functional, ready to receive the Evergreen software. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Although we might have to push that window a little bit. I don't know how long it would take to get the equipment in and configured at the EOU end and on the network, that type of thing. So we probably couldn't look at doing an upgrade until at least February. But obviously, we could find all of that information out and communicate with the council as well as the rest of the Sage libraries on what those date potentials would be.
I'm going to assume that we've now just adopted in our conversation the Evergreen upgrade, or do we have more details on that to discuss?
I don't have any details other than 3.6 has been released, and there are some very nice additions to 3.6, but I probably would address those in the next council meeting as far as what all of those details are. One of the enhancements that was partially sponsored by LSDA funds was a reservations module for the community colleges or any academic partner or I guess any library that wants to use reserves. That functionality is in 3.6. As well as a further rewrite of the software for more efficiency for the web. So, but yeah, I'll highlight those features at the next council meeting.
Okay. I guess what I'd like to propose is that we put together the plan, and I mean, I'm not hearing objections from anyone. Not that we've given them a lot of time to speak. But I guess I'd like to see a more detailed plan that we've talked with EO or the university about their upgrade schedule, whether we can get our equipment scheduled in there, get some confirmation on the prices, and then and the timeline. Or do we need to make an approval now to go forward with it, or do we want to get the details in place and then make an approval?
Well, I didn't share all the details with you because I didn't want to bore you with what kind of network card we chose and how much memory.
Yep.
And we've already worked with EOU on the recommendations for the hardware.
Okay.
So at this point, we would just need the council approval to move forward with purchasing new equipment, and then we can develop a plan for the timing of all of that hardware being installed, as well as the software, and tie that in with a possible date for Evergreen upgrade.
This is Dia. I like where this is heading, and I think we should move forward with it. I think if we wait another 2 months, it's another 2 months of potential agony for both the system administrator side and also all of the staff and patrons. So I guess I make a motion that we move forward.
A motion on the table. Do I hear a
This is
second?
Ryan. I'll second it.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any objections to the motion on the table? Hearing or seeing no objections, we will again call this an approval. Unless there are comments to be made, please make them now if there are. Let's get some new equipment bought.
All right. Sounds exciting. We will do that.
When do we get a test?
What's that?
No test drive?
You want to test drive the new equipment?
Well, we ought to have a little bit of a smile coming out of this meeting today.
Well, yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, the one benefit I'm looking forward to is also with the new server purchases, we're going to be able to have a more robust test server that's not as old and is more up to date. And we'll be able to use that quite a bit as we approach new versions so that staff can get acquainted with new functionality. So that's going to be another additional benefit because our test server was just too old to handle what we wanted it to handle. And now we'll be able to move forward with that as well.
Sounds like good all the way around and like we're funded for it and everything else. So that's great. We have accomplished everything on our agenda today, folks, unless there are other things that we now want to talk about. Is there any need to talk about COVID restrictions or anything like that that we have talked about in the past occasionally, but not necessarily? And
I don't know. I've had a couple libraries approach me about having to close for 2 or 3 weeks. So we've done the emergency closure for them again.
Okay.
I just wonder, what are your libraries seeing? Are you seeing additional restrictions because of government policies or?
I've looked at the governor's, what was sent out from the state library for libraries. I don't believe we're coming even close to 75% load of our building at this time, which if we go by the commercial standard is what we go by. If I were to cut that in half, I don't think I'm meeting that load. And so based on that, I don't feel at all like I'm pushing it, frankly, by staying open.
Okay.
Our community is wearing the masks when they come in. We are seeing some use, but I mean, right now, if I have 10 or 15 people in the building, customers, that's a big crowd for me right now. And I'm not doing any of the things that brings a crowd. So those are people coming on their own for their own purposes, because I'm not doing any programming or anything that draws a crowd that way. So I feel like we're already hitting many of the marks that it talked about in that document, and that we can stay open and continue to serve the community. Maybe I'm being a maverick, but I don't like the idea of closing when I don't have to.
You're not a maverick. We're the same here in Baker.
Glad to
There's
hear it.
several others. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've also got time limits. So 30 minutes for browsing unless they're using a computer, and then it's 1 hour.
Yeah.
Is that hard to regulate, Perry?
No, like Mark said, we don't have a lot of traffic. We have a little Google document that we track expiration times on, and we just give people a visitor pass, and there's never so many people in that the front desk staff can't remember who it is whose time is expiring, and sometimes we have people over their time, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
We've only had one person who went over their time in LeGrand and he fell asleep.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a back to the old days of library land, isn't it?
Mhm.
Sleeping customers.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And we actually were asked to revert back to curbside service by the city, so we're currently curbside here.
Okay.
So
Yeah, my city just didn't see that at this point, or hasn't asked me to do that. If they had, we would have. I just. So.
I see people coming in, and reading the newspapers and getting on the computers, and I think, well, these these are people that aren't so plugged into the internet, so I guess they could get their news with the radio and TV, but local news, that's important for them to be able to get the newspaper.
yeah, that is.
Mhm.
All right. Well, appreciate everybody's participation. I think we accomplished some things that need to be done today. Hopefully we haven't taken up too much of your time. I am grateful that we have Sage and that we have a system that works, and we're moving it forward and keeping it going good. So thank you, Beth, for the work that you do, and John as well. It's good to see responses and getting things back up, and so thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care, everyone.
All by yourselves.